Welcome to a brand new deep dive where we take your source material and kind of try to extract some of those golden nuggets of knowledge. And today we're diving headfirst into the world of neuroscience,
Yeah.
specifically ion channels and synaptic transmission.
Essentially how neurons, which are the building blocks of our nervous system,
Yeah.
communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. I mean, when you think about it, right? Billions of these neurons in our brains,
Yeah.
each forming thousands of connections. It's like
Right.
a symphony of electrical and chemical signals
Right.
constantly happening. So where do these ion channels, like where do they come into play?
So imagine each neuron is like a bustling city,
Right.
right? And information needs to flow through this intricate network of roads.
Yeah.
Right. So ion channels, they're like the traffic signals, you know.
Okay.
They control the flow of these charged particles called ions
Okay.
across the neuron's membrane. And these ions carry electrical currents, which are essentially the language of neurons.
Okay. So the ion channels are kind of determining which messages get through and when.
Exactly.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, they're the gatekeepers.
I read about a research method called patch clamping.
Right.
And this, like, revolutionized the way we can actually study these channels.
Yeah, absolutely. Before patch clamping, trying to understand how these ion channels worked, it was kind of like trying to listen to a single conversation in a noisy stadium.
Yeah, I bet.
So this method, patch clamping, allows scientists to actually zoom in
Wow.
and study the electrical activity of a single ion channel.
That's like having a microscopic microphone
Ex-
for the brain.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's incredible. And speaking of things that are, on that really tiny scale, we learned about some fascinating,
Right.
albeit a little scary, toxins that actually target these ion channels.
Right, right.
The pufferfish, for example,
Yeah,
produces tetrodotoxin,
right.
which can actually paralyze by blocking sodium channels. It's like something out of a spy movie.
Yeah, it is fascinating to think about, this back and forth, this evolutionary arms race between predators and prey
Right.
that leads to something as potent as tetrodotoxin.
Yeah.
It really highlights how powerful these tiny channels are.
Yeah.
But on a positive note, these toxins have become really invaluable tools for researchers. By actually studying how they affect these ion channels, we can start to develop new drugs for a variety of neurological conditions.
So it's like turning the enemy's weapon into a shield.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Now, there are many types of ion channels, right?
Yeah.
Each one has, I don't know, it's a union doorman policy
Yes.
of what it lets in and out.
They have different gating mechanisms.
Right, and one of the articles used a great analogy.
Right.
Think of a gate that can be opened by a key,
Right.
a voltage change,
Right.
or even temperature.
And that's not all.
Yeah.
Some even respond to mechanical forces.
Really?
Like the pressure of touch.
Wow.
But yeah, so those gating mechanisms that you mentioned, those are the main ones.
Okay.
One fascinating example is the TRPV1 channel. This channel is like a sensor for both heat and capsaicin.
What is capsaicin?
Capsaicin is that fiery compound found in chili peppers.
Wait, so that's why both a hot stove and a spicy curry make me sweat.
Precisely.
It's the same channel.
It's the same channel being activated.
Oh, wow.
And that's just one example of how these channels play a role in so many physiological processes,
That's incredible.
from sensing our environment to controlling muscle movement.
It's mind-blowing. Speaking of sensing, how about our sense of touch?
Yes.
That's thanks to those pressure-sensitive channels, right? The ones that respond to those mechanical forces.
Exactly. That's right. And the key players here are a family of proteins called piezo channels.
Piezo channels.
Yeah, they're essential for sensing light touch. And interestingly, they also play a role in pain perception,
Oh, okay.
particularly a phenomenon called allodynia.
Allodynia, that sounds kind of intimidating. What is that exactly?
Well, imagine you have a sunburn, right? And even a light touch on your skin, it sends like a jolt of pain.
Right.
That's allodynia. When something that shouldn't really be painful, like a gentle touch, is perceived as painful, it's because those piezo channels are sending signals that something's wrong,
Interesting.
even if it's just a gentle touch. And it highlights, I think, how complex and nuanced our sensory systems are.
Wow. I never even knew there was a term for that. So we've talked about how these signals, they travel within a neuron,
Right.
but how do they jump the gap to the next neuron? That's where synaptic transmission comes in, right? Yeah.
Exactly. It's like a relay race.
Okay.
And the synapse is the point where the baton gets passed from one runner, or in this case, neuron, to the next.
Right.
But unlike a physical handoff, neurons can communicate using either direct electrical coupling
Okay.
or chemical messengers called neurotransmitters.
So it's like choosing between a landline and sending a text message,
Exactly.
with each method kind of having its own advantages.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
It's amazing how the brain actually utilizes both. And get this,
Yeah.
while chemical synapses are more common, those super fast electrical synapses,
Yeah.
they're essential in areas like the hippocampus,
Right.
which play a key role in learning and memory.
Exactly. It's like the express lane for crucial information.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But, and, let's not underestimate the power of chemical synapses.
Okay.
They may be a bit slower, but they offer greater flexibility and control over neuronal communication.
Yeah.
It's about having the right tool for the job.
Okay. So both types of synapses are really essential, each one kind of playing a specific role.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, I'm really curious about these chemical messengers, the neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
It's like a secret language being whispered between neurons.
It's fascinating, right?
How does that work exactly?
So imagine tiny packets of neurotransmitters being released like fireworks
Okay.
at a synapse,
Okay.
each carrying a specific message from one neuron to the next.
That's a vivid image. So how are these fireworks set off? What triggers the release of these neurotransmitters?
That's where calcium ions come in.
Calcium again.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Think of calcium as like the conductor of an orchestra,
Right.
giving the cue for neurotransmitter release.
Okay.
So when a nerve impulse reaches the end of a neuron,
Yeah.
it causes an influx of calcium ions.
Okay.
These calcium ions then trigger the fusion of synaptic vesicles, which are like tiny containers that hold the neurotransmitters
Right.
with the presynaptic membrane.
So it's like a carefully choreographed dance
Yeah.
with the calcium ions kind of leading the way.
Yeah, you could say that.
What happens to the neurotransmitters once they've delivered their message? Do they just hang out in the synapse?
That's a great question, and no. There's actually a fascinating recycling process that takes place. Think of it like a sophisticated postal system,
Right.
within the neuron. After they bind to their receptors, some neurotransmitters are taken back up into the sending neuron for reuse,
Oh,
while others are broken down by enzymes in the synapse.
interesting.
It's all about efficiency.
Like the ultimate eco-friendly system.
Exactly.
And speaking of systems, we've talked about how signals travel within a neuron and between neurons.
Right.
But how does this all come together to create the complexity of the brain?
Right.
What makes certain synapses excitatory and others inhibitory? It's amazing how these signals can tell a neuron to either get ready to fire or to just take a chill pill.
Right.
So how does that even work? What determines if a synapse is excitatory or inhibitory?
That's a great question. It all comes down to the specific type of neurotransmitter
Okay.
and the receptor that it binds to.
Okay.
Think of it like a lock and key system.
Okay, so different neurotransmitters have different keys.
Right.
And those keys can either unlock excitation or inhibition
Exactly.
in the receiving neuron.
Yes, some neurotransmitters, like glutamate, they generally have excitatory effects.
Okay.
They increase the likelihood of the receiving neuron firing off a signal.
So it's kind of like stepping on the gas pedal.
Exactly. And then you have the inhibitory neurotransmitters like GABA, which act more like a brake pedal, calming things down.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. This constant interplay between excitation and inhibition, it's crucial for maintaining the brain's delicate balance.
Right.
It's like walking a tightrope,
Yeah.
Too much excitation and things can go haywire, like in conditions like epilepsy.
Right. Too much inhibition and things slow down too much,
Yeah.
potentially leading to problems like coma.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot.
Right.
That perfect balance between the go and the stop signals.
Exactly.
It really makes you realize how intricate and finely tuned our brains really are.
It really is remarkable.
Yeah.
And to make things even more fascinating, there's another layer of complexity we need to consider here.
Okay.
Active transporters and ion exchangers.
Okay, we haven't really touched on those yet.
Right.
What makes them so important?
Well, we've talked about ion channels controlling the flow of ions in and out of neurons, right?
Right.
But those channels aren't the only players in this game.
Okay.
Active transporters and ion exchangers are crucial for maintaining the concentration gradients of ions across the neuron's membrane. So they're like essential for creating the right environment
Exactly.
for those ion channels to do their job.
Yes, they're like the unsung heroes,
I like them.
working behind the scenes to keep everything running smoothly.
So I'm getting the sense that teamwork is crucial in the brain.
Absolutely. For example, one of the most important active transporters is the sodium-potassium pump,
Okay.
or NAK-ATPase.
Okay.
This pump constantly moves sodium ions out of the neuron and potassium ions in, using energy in the process.
So it's like a revolving door, constantly kind of shuffling those ions back and forth to
Exactly.
maintain that delicate balance.
Precisely. This constant pumping action is essential for establishing the neuron's resting membrane potential,
Okay.
which is like its baseline electrical charge.
Right.
Without it, neurons wouldn't be able to generate or transmit signals effectively.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And what about those ion exchangers?
Right.
What's their role in all of this?
So ion exchangers, as their name suggests, exchange one type of ion for another.
Makes sense.
One really crucial example is the sodium-calcium exchanger,
Oh, okay.
which helps to regulate calcium levels inside the neuron.
Calcium again.
I know, right?
Those ions seem to be everywhere in the nervous system.
They really are.
Yeah.
And for good reason. Remember how calcium triggers neurotransmitter release?
Yes.
Well, too much calcium inside the neuron can be toxic.
wow.
So the sodium-calcium exchanger acts like a bouncer,
Okay.
keeping those calcium levels in check.
So we have all these players working together. It's like
I know, it's amazing.
ion channels, active transporters, and ion exchangers,
Yep.
all carefully orchestrated to make sure that those neurons can communicate effectively.
They're pretty incredible.
It's a pretty impressive system. But what happens when things like go wrong in this system?
Right.
The research mentioned some clinical implications,
Yeah.
specifically a disease called myasthenia gravis.
That's right. Myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disease where the body's own immune system mistakenly attacks acetylcholine receptors
Oh, wow.
at the neuromuscular junction.
Okay.
This disrupts the communication between nerves and muscles, leading to muscle weakness and fatigue.
That sounds incredibly debilitating.
It can be, yeah.
What are some of the symptoms of that?
So one of the telltale signs of myasthenia gravis is drooping eyelids.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and this happens because the muscles that are responsible for holding the eyelids up are affected by the disease.
Interesting.
Other common symptoms include difficulty swallowing, shortness of breath,
Oh, wow.
and weakness in the arms and legs.
It's amazing how a breakdown in this microscopic communication system can have such a significant impact on someone's life.
It really is, yeah.
Are there any treatments available for something like that?
Fortunately, there are treatments that can help manage the symptoms and improve quality of life for people with myasthenia gravis.
Okay, good.
Medications that suppress the immune system can help to reduce the attack on acetylcholine receptors.
So it's incredible how we can use our understanding of these intricate molecular mechanisms to develop targeted treatments.
Right.
Speaking of which, one of the articles mentioned botulinum toxin. Right.
More commonly known as Botox.
Right.
As an example of how our knowledge of synaptic transmission has led to some unexpected application.
Yeah.
It's not just for wrinkles anymore, right?
You got it. Botulinum toxin actually works by interfering with the very process we've been discussing, neurotransmitter release.
Okay.
It specifically targets those snare proteins,
Okay.
which are essential for the fusion of synaptic vesicles with the presynaptic membrane.
So by blocking neurotransmitter release, Botox essentially paralyzes the muscle. Right. It prevents it from contracting.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And also, a little bit unnerving, honestly, how a substance that can be so medically useful,
Right.
can also be used for cosmetic purposes. Yeah, it really speaks to the power of understanding these, fundamental biological processes.
Right.
Our knowledge of synaptic transmission has led to some, incredible advancements in medicine.
Yeah.
And it continues to pave the way for new treatments for a wide range of neurological and muscular disorders.
It's like having a repair manual
Right.
for the most complex machine on Earth,
Yeah.
our brains.
That's amazing.
So before we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
was there anything that really stood out to you?
Honestly.
Yeah, during our exploration of ion channels and synaptic transmission.
I think, honestly, for me, it's the sheer speed and precision of it all.
Right.
We're talking about events happening in milliseconds
Yeah.
with billions of neurons firing and communicating in concert.
Right.
It's like it's a symphony of activity, right?
Yeah.
Happening every second of our lives.
Yeah.
And yet, like, it all works.
It does.
With this, like, remarkable accuracy.
It really is amazing. It really makes you appreciate the incredible coordination
I know, it's really something.
that's happening in our brains. Like every moment, from sensing, I don't know, a gentle breeze on our skin to like recalling a childhood memory. It all comes down to these intricate dances
I know.
of ions and neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder, like, what other secrets are hidden within these intricate networks of neurons.
That's the beauty of neuroscience, right?
Yeah.
The more we learn,
Yeah.
the more we realize how much more there is to discover. And each new insight, it opens up these new avenues of exploration.
Totally.
Leading us closer to, like, unraveling the mysteries of the brain.
Right.
And ultimately ourselves.
It's a journey that never really ends, does it?
No, it really doesn't.
Well, on that note, we hope this deep dive has sparked a sense of wonder and inspired you to continue exploring the amazing world of neuroscience.
That's fascinating stuff.
It really is. It's a field full of surprises, and who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one making those groundbreaking discoveries about the universe between our ears.
That's right. You never know.
Thanks for joining us.